powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Josh Hennick filling in for Mike Gale here on a Tuesday edition of the Sports Batch on 97.3 ESPN. Eagles, another dominant win on Sunday, and of course they made some moves earlier today. We told you about it. Anthony Harris is back on the practice squad, and of course Brett Kern is in the house as well for the Eagles. To get to all that and more on the Eagles' dominant win and the team moving forward, Adam Caplan is back here on Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Adam, welcome back in. How you doing today?
Josh, good to be with you as always. I am well. Hope you're doing well. And yeah, the Eagles had a flurry of moves. They had to, because they had to do something at safety and punter. And we discussed on our show on Monday morning what the opportunities were for the punters out there. Brett Kern would be the guy that they were going to sign, and that's what they did. He'll be. I know he's on the practice squad, but that's for logistics. They have some things to go through. He'll be their punter on Sunday. In fact, when they sign him, I'm told it'll be a 1-year deal off their practice squad. And although technically, I should say this, they could elevate him. They could use 3 elevations because he's on the practice squad. But his contract when he gets moved up will be the standard 1-year deal, and then they'll just bring him back most likely. What Josh, the issue that the Eagles are having is because they got to get through. You mentioned Anthony Harris. They have to see how he's doing. They've kept that one. They kept the one roster spot open today, which is interesting. So they could do it any way they want, but the money will be standard. They're not giving him any bonus money, I'm told, with Brett Kern.
Yeah, I've kind of felt like Adam said earlier, it's almost like reinforcements, right? Just you gotta have the guys to make sure that you have just in case, because CJ Garner, he saw us to miss his 4 games on the injury reserve. Reed Blankenship, we all saw the back of Von Wallace's jersey on Sunday, so they had to do something.
Yeah, it's a shame that Blankenship got hurt because he looked really good. He had a tremendous blitz. He made Daniel Jones run to the sideline. His blitz was that great. So when you really look at this situation, they're very light at safety. Right now, it's going to be Epps, who's been great this season, having a really breakout season. He was good last year, but he's taking his game to another level. Gavon Wallace. And what they did is they played a little bit, not a lot. Josiah Scott played a little safety last week in sub packages. Sasha can do it. Now, the problem with Sasha is he's out of elevation for the regular season. They would have to sign him off of it. I don't know if they want to do that because that would actually cost him a roster spot. He would count against the 53. So it would make more sense to me if Harris is ready, if they think through practice he's ready to go, he would be their third safety this week. And look, he knows the scheme, Josh. He was with them last year. I know he's not a great player anymore. He's clearly at the end of it. But he does know the scheme, and that's the key to bringing guys in here now. It's hard to bring in players now who don't know the scheme. He happens to know it.
You mentioned about knowing the scheme. Explain to the audience a little bit more how important that is this time of year, because, this time of year, this is where you just see guys you can come in and play, right? With the injuries that are out there, you can't sit here and have to, obviously Baker Mayfield, that was a weird situation on Thursday Night Football, but that's not a common thing.
No, let me give you an example. So the Niners brought back Josh Johnson for the 3rd time in his career, second under Kyle Shanahan. So what I'm told was they needed someone who knew the West Coast terminology at quarterback. That you can't bring in someone who knows the numbering system. That's the North Turner system. You need the verbiage system. You just can't. This time of year at quarterback, you got to know someone who knows the system. I don't care how talented they are or not talented. You can't bring in people who don't know your system. So Harris knows it, so he could play in a pinch. If he, I would assume he's going to be their third safety this week. You need to have 3 or 4 going into a game. So you need someone who knows what they're doing. And by the way, they're doing so much more this year, Josh, than they were doing last year. Remember Gannon, and it was true. He coached the limitations of a secondary, particularly at corner, opposite Slay with Steven Nelson, and the lack of depth, the lack of talent at linebacker. Now he's able to run the full gamut, and you're certainly seeing that.
How concerned should Eagle fans be with the injuries piling up in recent weeks?
Here's the thing. Yeah, they are piling up. It's true. But you have to look at where they're happening. Okay, so Kyron Johnson, we don't know yet about his injury, whether he's going to be available this week. He's one of the key special teams players because he's super fast. Sean Bradley didn't play last week, one of their key special teams players. Oh, by the way, the coverage is really good. 2 weeks in a row, Josh. I don't know what breaking news. It's actually pretty good. Now, it's hard to understand why, other than they're playing their gaps right and they're not leaving room. But if you look at the guys that are hurt, okay, Sipos is out for the regular season. Mosher asked me on Monday, he asked me what I'd heard. Said I don't expect to see him the rest of the regular season. He goes, what about training? What about postseason? I said, I don't know. I don't know enough about the injury. I just heard he's going to miss the rest of the regular season, and they put him on IR today. But here's another thing for you. No one's told me this, but here's what I think. Brett Kern had a great training camp and great preseason. Just the kid Stonehouse beat him out. The kid Stonehouse was unbelievable in training camp. Maybe the best leg in the NFL right now as far as punter. What if Kern's really good? Why would you bring Sipos back? That would make no sense to me.
I mean, it's almost like with Howie with getting Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph, right? It's like, it's like, hey, we know these guys can play, but, they just didn't latch on with a team and, right place, right time. Is that fair?
Yeah, and the thing, yes, absolutely. And and look, there are no sacred cows here, which is a coaching term. Jordan Davis is just not going to play very much because of Linval Joseph. Linval Joseph is just a better football player. It's not a criticism of Jordan Davis, it's just a fact. So Jordan Davis is just not going to play very much. Plus, he's come back from a high ankle sprain, which is not going to heal in 4 weeks. It's typically a 6 to 8 week injury, and that's just the way it is. But Josh, they're in a really good situation now. So you mentioned the injuries. They're all going to be back, other than Sipos, because they won't need him most likely. They're all going to be back for the playoffs. Now, we don't know, though. The one we don't know is C.J. Gardner-Johnson. The earliest he could return by rule is Week 17 against the Saints, his former team. But because of the laceration he's got on his kidney, plus what we've heard is a little bit of pain in his ribs, it's just all he's got to get cleared. So we don't know exactly when he'll be back, but we're expecting him back for the playoffs.
Speaking of the defense, Adam, the defense, despite the final score, played very well against the Giants on Sunday. I mean, this is a unit that got 12 quarterback hits. They were really, really good at pursuit and containment. I thought that for 2 straight weeks, we got to give the defense a lot of credit.
Josh, and I'm going to give you a little nugget for your listeners. I was told this yesterday, and then I'm like, I got to watch this. So I did. Not only was Son Reddick the best defensive player on the Eagles on Sunday, this is his best game as an Eagle, and he was relentless. He was unstoppable. I didn't look at the pressure numbers. My mouth would drop, Josh, watching this tape on earlier today. I just couldn't believe it. You hear when NFL people tell you this stuff, you always want to try to watch it, but I don't always have the time to do it. This is the first game. We're going to talk more about this on tomorrow's Inside the Birds podcast. But this is the first game that I've watched from beginning to end, the actual coaching tape. And I'm just blown away by this. The Reddick, the scheme is really good. They're doing a lot of stuff that they weren't doing last year. It's just it's just remarkable. But I'm telling you, Son Reddick was unbelievable. Poor Evan Neal, the right tackle for the Giants. He was lined up mostly over him. He ate his lunch money, man. It was incredible. Folks, I hope you get to be able to see that tape because you'll be blown away by it.
I remember the one play on Neal. He literally, Neal put out his hands to block him, and he just chopped his arms down. Yeah. And it's almost like Neal didn't realize what happened, and Reddick was already past him.
Well, there's one move, which we're going to talk more about in tomorrow's show, but they ran a stunt. And I don't know that I've seen anyone. His quicks, a get-off, I know the Eagles run a 34 front. It's not really a 5-2. It's a 34 with 2 overhangs. If you work at the NFL, they call this a 34. He's perfect for the scheme. He's about as good as it gets. You cannot find an edge rusher like this. Guys like this, Josh, don't become available in free agency. This is just one of those things. You got to give Harry Roseman credit. He clearly got together with Jonathan Gannon. There were going to be some adjustments to the scheme, and there have been. And they're running this speed. They're running a speed front here, speed outside front, and nobody can handle it.
Talking with Adam Caplan, NFL Insider from the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, at Caplan NFL on Twitter. Adam, let's flip it over to the offense. This is now multiple weeks that the offense has put up big numbers, but for a lot of people, it's the aggressive passing game that is really standing out.
I know. This is actually the 3rd straight game where they scored a massive amount of points. In fact, it's 123 points over the last 3 games. But on your point, yes, the last two games were aggressive passing it. In fact, I'm sure they would have been more aggressive throwing it against Green Bay, but Green Bay decided not to tackle anyone, so they stuck with a run.
Right.
I had a great joke on Sunday. I said even Andy Reid would still run the football against Green Bay because it's true. Like, how could you not? They just would not tackle anyone. But if the staff had their druthers, and more often than not, they come out throwing. That's how you evaluate whether a team's passing or running offense by their first half run calls. So the Eagles, the majority of the time, are going to throw it. But there are times like Green Bay that they threw it. Green Bay, where they ran it. They're just, it's their plan. This is what they wanted to be. It's the personnel that they're going after. The rain was a non-factor. We told people this in the pregame show. It won't be a factor. It's in the low 40s. You could throw, Josh, in single digits as long as there's not wind. Cold weather doesn't matter as long as you could grip the football. It's wind and cold weather that becomes a problem. So they went out. The wind was light, and they threw it, and they were relentless. I think he threw it, 27 times, which is a lot in the first half. Hurts was magnificent. His accuracy is really, really good, and he's playing at a supremely high level. I had a coach tell me, like 3 weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, I had a coach tell me who had looked at Eagles tape. He said, I got to tell you, Hurts is probably one of the top 7 quarterbacks in the league right now. I'm like, really? He goes, the guy is like really aggressive throwing it. And he did not see a lot of him last year. I said, trust me, he wasn't like this last year. The coaches are trusting him now. Remember, Josh, they took the ball out of his hands after week 6 last year. Mm-hmm. They're not doing that. And not only will he be a Pro Bowler, but he probably won't be able to play in the flag football game. He's so good right now. It's amazing.
Leads the NFL in quarterback rating with 108.4 right now, according to Pro Football Reference with Jalen Hurts. But it's also the running game, is it not, Adam? It's Miles Sanders getting 144 rushing yards in that game on Sunday. And it really feels like this offense has really found its rhythm and balance.
It has. It'll look balanced after the second half because they're a heavy pass team, and then what happens, they get a lead. They've done this a lot. Greg Cosell pointed this out. He noticed it looking at the play calls. They get a big lead. This is what analytic data wants you to do. They want you to throw heavy first half, get the lead by 2 touchdowns in the second half, and run the hell out of it. That's what they do, and that's why it looks like balance at the end, where they're not really trying to be balanced. They're just, when you get a big lead, there's, you start playing to your personnel and your lead. So you're running. Miles Sanders has gotten those tough yards. We have a really good nugget coming for you tomorrow on Sanders and how he's improved. But he's, it's interesting because they have so many guys to re-sign. Josh, the Eagles have the leverage here, but he's one of their own. No, he's one of their own people, so they're going to want to probably re-sign him. It's just they have so many contracts to get through. This will not be easy.
They got a 1,000-yard receiver, a 1,000-yard rusher. But actually, with 2,000-yard receivers, really, when you think about it, with Smith by the end of the year, with the schedule coming up. Sure. What does it say to you that they've been able to be, not just get those stats, because obviously, fans, they love the stats. They get excited about that. But for you, Adam, when you talk to NFL people, what does it say to you that this passing game is this aggressive, this running game is this effective?
Because they have the personnel to do it. You can't do this without A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown is an absolute superstar. He's right now one of the top 5 to 7 receivers in the National Football League. He's finally in an offense that actually wants to throw the football. They're not married to having to run the ball with Derrick Henry. And this is what Jeffrey Lurie wants, Howie Roseman wants. And by the way, Nick Sirianni wanted this. He wanted to throw like crazy. If you remember, he came out throwing crazily at Atlanta last year, although they weren't throwing a lot downfield. They tried against the Niners, and Sirianni saw that Hurts wasn't ready for it, and eventually they take the air out of the football. But now that he's running the offense that he wants and a quarterback who could execute it, it's pretty remarkable. When you've got, and Nick Sirianni, what's his term? Show me a good coach, show me good players. This is what you got right now going on with this football team. I love that term, and it's true.
I remember it was you and Jeff talked about on the Inside the Birds pod last year about the fact of Sirianni handing off the play calling to Steichen and how Steichen became more of a larger role in that. Well, since that Lions game last year, the Eagles are 19-4 in the regular season. So, it's definitely a sign that, Sirianni, he's pushing the right buttons, right?
And also, by the way, with Sirianni, best road record in the National Football League since he became the Eagles head coach. It's remarkable. They only have 3 losses, Josh, on the road since he's been head coach. That's crazy.
That's insane. Adam, yeah, go ahead.
I'm just going to say, Josh, it never – what generally happens is the young head coaches are good at home, but they're not good on the road. They don't know how to handle it. And not like his record's bad at home. It's just not as dominant. I just think people need to understand how ridiculous it is.
Before I let you go, Adam, I wanted to ask you, as you just mentioned a few minutes ago about the weather, about the fact that, how it was raining on Sunday in that game. Well, this is not the first time they've won a game in bad weather. That Jacksonville game was a downpour like crazy. So, obviously, this team, they can handle the weather. That's not an issue at all.
No, in fact, speaking of people who were there, it was way different than the Jacksonville game was really hard to even see visually. This game was light. It rained like the entire game, but it was a light rain. It was not. There was no wind, so very little wind. It was less than 10 miles an hour, which is rare for Giant Stadium. The new Giant Stadium, if you want to call it that, but it meant Life Stadium, and it just worked out. It was just the perfect marriage of pass protection, which you need to mention. I mean, Jalen Hurts could have read a book back there. It was crazy how much time he had to throw, but the key to him compared to last year he wasn't making these throws. He's seeing it. He's got clarity. He's not missing guys anymore who are open. He's throwing with great timing. The next question, we asked this Sunday to Cosell and Avant, how much better can he get? Well, obviously he could always get better, but it's really hard to pinpoint anything really significant. He's just that good.
He's Adam Caplan, Caplan NFL on Twitter, the Inside the Birds podcast. Q&A dropped this morning with Jason Avant and Quentin Michael. And, of course, Adam and Jeff will drop a new episode tomorrow. And, of course, don't forget about the Patreon and, of course, the pre- and post-game shows, Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, Inside the Birds YouTube.
You got it, my friend. Thank you.